I had the coolest job that any electrical engineer could ever have on the ground crew for Solar Impulse 2, the first solar-powered airplane to fly around the world only using the power of the sun. IEEE USA has given me a competitive edge because of their support system. It is so much easier doing something and being out of your comfort zone when you have someone there saying, "You got this." IEEE USA is more than just a network, it's a family.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. My name is Corey. I am your host for this afternoon's webinar. Delighted to have you all here. Before we get started, I'd like to just take a moment to let you know that we'll be sending a short survey to all registrants after this event, and we'd love to have your feedback. We value your opinions and really appreciate it if you could share your thoughts. Our goal is, of course, to create programming that's valuable, relevant, and of interest to you, and your thoughts in those surveys will go a long way to helping us make this even better as time goes on. I'm delighted to bring you a wonderful panel here today. We've got Terrence Yeo, Dr. Terrence Yeo. You'll recall from previous webinars, this is the third webinar in the series. If you've missed those, be sure to catch up on them available through our YouTube channel or online. Dr. Yeo is a scientist at FTS International, a company that provides independent analysis and mission support services. Dr. Yeo has held a variety of roles in systems engineering, R&D portfolio management, program management, and corporate strategy. He's an IEEE senior member, has a passion for creating technology, holds 11 patents, and recently published a book titled The Ultimate Upgrade. And there it is, yeah. And joining him today, we've got two special guests. Dr. Calvin Lang has worked in the aerospace and defense industry for over 20 years. He is a doctorate in atmospheric and oceanic sciences from UCLA, and his expertise spans numerous areas, including remote sensing data processing for weather and climate applications, signal and image processing for target identification, ground systems architecture, and space-based remote sensing payloads. We also have Mr. Ray Gammon joining us today. Mr. Gammon is a satellite systems engineer at FTS International, a company that provides that independent analysis and mission support services. He's a Master of Science in Computer Information Technology from Southern New Hampshire University with a focus in data analytics, and is a U.S. Army veteran. In his professional career, Mr. Gammon has held roles in mission operations, signals analysis, modeling and simulation, and much more. So without further ado, I am going to pass it off to Dr. Terrence Yeo, and we'll be getting things started. Dr. Yeo?
Awesome. Thanks so much, Corey, for this great introduction and the opportunity to present about mentoring and building a culture of mentorship. This particular series is the fourth in five, as Corey had mentioned. The first one was about the startup lifestyle, being able to set up forward and become extremely optimized in your work ethic and how you do these things. And as you do things in parallel, able to then know yourself and understand what your strengths and limitations, your weaknesses, your threats are. And then from there, finding your path. And all of these videos, finding your path kind of culminates that driving into, these left turns in your career that take you to places that you've never been before, and find excitement and find that joy that you're seeking. In all of those things, mentorship comes very much into play, both as a mentee, receiving that insight to know when to do that turn, or when to do that braking, or when to accelerate. And then also to become a mentor, to be able to look out for those curves ahead of the road and make sure that your mentee doesn't make any of those mistakes. With me are two great men, Ray Gammon and Calvin Lang, who have a passion for mentorship. And they have very unique experiences of mentorship and how they came about to be mentors. And so each of us is going to give about 5 minutes of information about who we are and why we're passionate about mentorship, and exactly what are those key nuggets we want to leave with you right here and now about being a mentor and also being a mentee. So Ray, why don't you kick this off for our group and share a little bit about yourself and what you're in for mentorship.
Yeah, well, thank you, Terrence. Um, Mentorship for me started very young or very early in my career when I was the mentoree. Through the military and then into the technical realm that my career path took me, I had a lot of individuals who knew they were mentoring me, and I knew they were my mentor. And I also had coworkers and personal friends that, when I look back on it, provided uh, extremely valuable levels of mentoring throughout my career and helped me vector to ensure I'm going in the right direction, whether it was in personal decisions or a piece of analysis that I was working on and providing to our customer. As I, went through different companies and became more and more senior, going, up the chain, uh, it dawned on me my value as an individual can be capped out, and the only way I can add more value to something is by having other people that I can work with, a team that I can work with, and really a team that I can mentor seemed like the most natural thing for me. And that became very tangible when I joined FTS. I was able to start, a software development program where we were developing an analysis tool, and we were able to use summer interns to help write the code. Right, we were prototyping, doing proof of concepts, and really seeing what can we turn in a 12-week time period with junior engineers, going to first principles and creating something that's of value to our company and to our customers. That then turned into maturing these young engineers after the internship. Then they became employees, and then that career path that I was on, that I look back 20 years, I see them on that same career path. And how can I help them navigate all the pitfalls and challenges and, sometimes confusing nature of being a technical professional? And, that's where I get a lot of value, right? A lot of satisfaction. I do love my job, but I feel like I have more energy to spend, and I love spending that energy with young engineers, right, and helping them, take over in my shoes when I decide to, leave the game.
That's really awesome, Ray. Really hear your heart throughout what you shared, not only for interns and being able to push them to do something that's really amazing that no one else has done in such a short period of time. I know a little bit of what you've been able to do, and it's just exciting, right? We had a discussion after seeing the first internship presentation last year, and I was like, this is what my other company's been trying to do for the last 5 years. How did you do it in a couple summers? And I think that's the exciting part, but also that long-term vision and long-term plan of what do you do with interns who are now become coworkers. And I know that there's that in there for all of us. And I'd like to get some insight from Calvin. Calvin, how about you share about yourself and what you're passionate about in mentorship?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. And Ray, that was an awesome testimony. I just love to hear like what you've done at FTS. So my journey is a little bit different. Growing up, I didn't really love math, didn't really love science, but just kind of entered into it because I felt like I need to make money. I need to get out of college. I need to, have a job to take care of myself. So I ended up studying remote sensing, got my PhD, well, physics, then got my PhD, started working at a defense company. All the while they're just kind of growing as a person, right? But to give you some context of how I got there, though, growing up, I had a really hard time, home being a challenging place and not really having any mentors in my life when I was really young. And so throughout my childhood, just having a really challenge in knowing who I was. And so when I entered into junior high and high school, a faith community came around me, and that was my first experience with mentorship, and just really people coming around me saying, I believe in you. I know you can do this. You're going to be okay. And so that's what gave me the courage to do things like go into physics, go in to get my PhD, and also being in a place where I do really challenging roles at work. And I've been a mentee probably for up until like even my late 30s, really. I'd never really mentored anybody. And, but I think in those contexts, these people really believe in me, gave me the sort of the desire and hunger to pour back in. So, you know what, I can do this too. And I realized just how rewarding it is to feed into people's lives, believe in them, and help them rise up to the next level. And I feel like I haven't had that many years and been able to do that, but in the last 3 to 4 years, just a lot of opportunity, a lot of connection with people at work, and my faith community, and just communities around me, and being able to walk alongside them and see them transform into people that they really didn't believe in themselves before, but then seeing that they can succeed in this way just is so rewarding for me, but also being like, wow, we can really propagate this everywhere and we really need it around the world.
That's really wonderful, Calvin. Thanks for sharing. Thanks for being vulnerable. I think that's something that's really important in being a mentor. And also thanks for sharing about faith. I think faith is something that I addressed very briefly in the last presentation on finding your path. And I think that's an important part in everybody's journey. There's a journey of excellence, there's a journey of work, but there's also a journey of faith, and there's a journey of spirit. And I think we all have to understand that that's a whole body concept, whole human concept. And we shouldn't forget one or the other based on any preferences. So thanks for sharing. My mentorship journey, being a mentor, actually started 25 years ago. It actually was not what I expected to be, right? 25 years ago, I was a grad student. I was being mentored by other people left and right. But I had some similar things. I was working in inner city youth ministry. And I was usually doing some of the back-end bookkeeping, and we'd go out on the bus and do programs during the day to encourage the youth that were in the community to help them understand that there's more than what they see. There's more in the world than what they can see and project in their future. Give them encouragement, give them faith. And in that, I was asked, how about you mentor some of these kids? One of these kids was a boy about 8 years old, and he says, why don't you become his big brother? So I didn't really think much about it. I said, sure, I'll go meet with him and spend some time. And that first day, I remember just being really struck about how much of a need there is to be a mentor, to be a big brother, to be a big sister, to be someone who's been down a path, maybe not the same path as another one, but to have that same connection, that human connection of being together. And with that huge degree of responsibility came upon me, knowing that, okay, I was a mentee and I didn't realize that there's a responsibility to be a mentor. And then I started thinking all of my other mentors, my graduate student advisor, what he has to share about his life, that's something that's a burden on him to share to me. And how do I do that? And those things really got to me kind of early on. And I kind of stumbled into, okay, well, what is a mentor? How do I prioritize that mentor-mentee relationship? And during that period, I think one key thing was that I had to prioritize it over my own personal success. There were things I remember even my mentor said, you're good at science, you're doing things that no other people can do, but you're also doing these other things. Maybe you should focus on the science. And I came to a point saying, no, the time is now. I need to mentor this person right now. It's important. And I think those are the things that kind of instilled in me this thought of mentorship first, not personal success. Later on, I went into my first job and then corporate management position, and had an opportunity to formalize a company's intern program that had just started on a couple things here and there, a couple presentations over the summer. And we want to build that where senior leadership could come in, get some buy-in, get funding, and get some momentum among the base to grow those mentors. And as part of the program, have the mentees really get a lot out of it and make a cultural impact in the community at large in our company. And then later on, I moved from corporate management down to program management, and I saw that immediate need with all of the people around me, all of the people that I was working with, that each of them, whether they were more senior than me or less senior or junior than me, or just my coworkers, they all have a need for human connection, a shared experience, and how can we build more mentors in order to mentor everyone. And so that's why I'm passionate about this subject. That's why we're here today. That's why when I heard of your stories, Ray, as well as Calvin, realized this is something that we should talk about. We should spend some time talking about. Yeah. And I know that the general community has a lot of questions. So if you are listening in and you have a question here and there, please do put it down on the chat basis throughout any of these streaming platforms. And we'll get to a question and answer period right in the middle of this presentation. So let's talk about benefits of mentorship, and some are pretty obvious and others are not so obvious. So one of my focuses is in order to be sustainable in a mentorship process, you need to have mutual benefits, not only for the mentee, which is fairly obvious, but also for the mentor. So let's start with the mentee, based off on our experiences, personal as well as being a mentor. What is positive for a mentee in a mentor-mentee relationship? And we're going to make it, popcorn, so anyone can talk about it. Whoever's
Yeah.
passionate about it first.
I mean, for me as a mentee, definitely it was just gaining a lot of wisdom from somebody else that's lived a life much longer than me, or just experienced in particular areas of my life that I'm just like, well, I'm struggling with this. I have no idea how to walk through it. So immediately, the immediate gains of just sort of wisdom and understanding about certain things in life, that was very, very much something. And also just feeling known. I think the mentee, when they get mentored by somebody who really cares for them, they feel known, and I think everybody desires that.
Yeah, Calvin, if I can springboard off that, there are mentees who move across the country to take a new job, right? Or, completely leave their natural environment that they're comfortable in, and they don't know anybody. And, having that person that can, help, again, you can ask questions, right? Get responses. Where do I go? That is extremely valuable, and it becomes like your first contact in helping ground you in your new location or new adventure. And also with that, that there's a trajectory. The way I think of careers or what you're trying to accomplish, there's a certain path that all of us have. And when you're a mentee and you have a mentor helping you, your trajectory can be steeper, right? And the learning curve, right? You're spending fewer time plateaued, and you're getting that assistance to elevate yourself at a faster rate. And there's just a lot of value and wisdom that comes from opening yourself up as a mentee to one or multiple mentors and getting all the different perspectives.
Yeah, and I think I remember my last boss at my last job. He actually said exactly that there's just this acceleration that you get when you're put into the right. I mean, because having the mentor and having the right sort of environment, and sort of, maybe you can call it an assignment or role or something where you can sink your teeth into, because it's one thing to be philosophical and just talk back and forth, but it's another thing to get your hands dirty on something, and having someone sort of guide you in that, and you grow so quickly in there because you have both the assignment and the person coming alongside you. So I think you're right on that one.
And
absolutely,
one
Calvin.
more, if you don't mind, Terrence. Also, we've seen young engineers come in and mentees come in, and they get dropped into large projects, right? And sometimes they cannot see the forest because of the trees in front of them. And again, having that person to say, you might be feeling isolated and working on this small component, but here's the big picture of what you're contributing to, and that adds value to that individual's work. And when they understand the value of what they're doing and it's contributing, it fosters all positive sort of relationships, teamwork, right?
Yep.
And the list can go on, right? So that there's that aspect as well.
Yeah, I think that's a really good aspect of thought, in that they get to see the forest from the trees. They get to understand that, but they also get that direction, that strategic direction, like one of those really, really high towers over the trees, saying yes, because every organization has its own culture. And some cultures thrive on somebody just really standing out and pushing forward an agenda and their thumbs up all the way. And others are more looking for building a base of strength and building a base of consensus, right? Slowly moving around and gaining that consensus before doing the ask. And I think each of those are very much valid in each of their cultures, but having a mentor who's seen that, experienced it, and also knows the lay of the land of the current organization is really, really helpful. But I think also, like what you said, Ray, having people who are outside of your organization come in and share their experiences is also very valid, because that allows you to then say, is the culture a valid culture? Can I do deltas from that culture and push the envelope just a little here in order to make that next step that's accelerating? I think that's definitely a benefit of a mentee. What do you think are benefits for a mentor in this process?
I can go first on this one, Calvin.
Sure.
So personally, there's a lot of personal value that is provided to me when I see somebody succeed, especially when it's an individual who comes in, they're brand new. eyes wide open, but a little bit of cautiousness, right, and lack of understanding. And you can see by just helping a little bit, you helping and somebody else helping, this person is holistically coming around to be a professional, right, and to be, high value added. As a mentor, that alone is it. It's such a huge benefit. It comes with a downside because eventually sometimes they have to move on. And again, when they move on, you have to look at it as they're moving to gain more experience, more value. This is part of their path. We've helped up until this point. I'm looking forward to see them again when they come back around on the journey and they're even better than, where they left off last with us.
Yeah, I love that. I love that feeling of seeing someone succeed and seeing someone advance in the career, advance in just even in a small area where they've grown sort of in their character. One of the things that I benefit from really is I learn from people a lot about their cultures, about their backgrounds, because I've been the last number of the 3 to 4 years just like mentoring people solely in my job because I was a manager and then a program manager. That I've had to become a very good sort of listener and a collaborative listener, because part of it is learning about the other person, because everybody's going to come at you differently. They're going to have different cultural backgrounds. They're going to have different thoughts about how to do things, and learning from them before sort of just saying, well, go do this, because some of those things may not sort of fit into their kind of the way that they're thinking. Now, eventually they got to own up to something, right? But the idea is to help understand them. So I help them the most effective way. And so I learn a lot about people. I learn about how to communicate. I learn different leadership styles, because different people need different kind of leadership styles as they're being mentored. And my former boss used to tell me, like, it is a mutual benefit, because not only does the other person benefit, but I gain a lot of understanding about how to upgrade myself in terms of, understanding people and adapting to different environments. So yeah.
You bring up everything you said, Calvin. Just started making more thoughts come into my head, because there's the various backgrounds, right? The diversity that you get in the company or whatever team you're working on. It's great and it's necessary, and it's taught me to be a better manager, to be more empathetic, right? To understand how to drive people differently. All of it is different, like you said, leadership skills, and that it's making me better, and as a better individual. And as a side note, because I get to work with college kids, I get to learn some of the college vernacular so I can look cool in front of my kids at home. Doesn't always work, but yeah, I try for some of that.
That's a really interesting side benefit of being a mentor. And then the other funny part is, of course, you start to look at, as you start to mentor, the age gap kind of gets longer and farther out, and you start to say, well, you know what, we should have a mentor that's in between us, because the gaps continue to widen. But I think that's one of the benefits of mentoring, especially serial mentoring, is that you get to see that progression of time and mark the time of yourself, right? You're looking at when you were menteed, and then you say, well, that person was my age when I was mentored by this person. I remember making this really rash decision. I can share with them this decision. And then sometimes I love getting surprised by telling them, don't do it this way, because that's what I did. And they do it anyway, right? And they don't take your advice, and they succeed. And then you go, wait a minute, I did it wrong, and therefore I told them, but then they did it wrong also, and they succeeded. What does that mean about my experience? I think that's one of the interesting benefits of mentorship, is you get to replay your own story and then ask the question, was it really my experience or my skill that got me here? Or was it a bunch of other factors that I did not take into account? And if so, what is that it factor that was missing? And I think that's where that mystery comes about in mentoring, is that we're separated by half a generation, some other things, factors that the organization, the culture that you experience does not exist anymore in the next generation. And yet the experiences you have, some have benefit, but they're not directly tied to the decision process. And those are just interesting things that I've been thinking about as you guys have been chatting. What are your thoughts?
one of the things that just crossed my mind was that as you were saying that, I was like, you know what? As we're learning, we also, because when we're mentoring people, we're also have people that are much more experienced than us, right? And they're older than us and they've been around a longer. And I almost feel like as we mentor people, we actually learn how to be people that are better mentees in some sense. And I don't use better in terms of quality, but better in terms of how we listen, how we approach thinking. It's like, this happened here. You know what? That means that when someone, uh, that's mentoring me says something to me, I don't just take everything as like, well, I'm going to do it exactly word for word, but I'm going to be like, I'm going to critically think about it and then
Mhm.
take steps and to be vulnerable about it. But I think that dialogue and that learning how to um, learn from from even our mentees actually helps us a long way being better mentees as well.
Yeah, and I would add one of the things that really opened my eyes dealing with college students and those that are just graduating is their experiences are dramatically different from mine when there was no cell phones that I carried around all the
Exactly.
time, right? Technology was not as accessible or abundant, right, with as far as resources and the internet and technology. Uh, so they have a significant leg up in some regards, but also they have some things that are hindrances and distractions in other regards. And I'm constantly and continuously impressed with the quality of young adults that are coming out of the schools, right? um, I've heard past generations say, this generation's the worst or whatever, right? But these young individuals are bright, they're determined, they're driven, and I just thoroughly enjoy seeing that, and it gives me great hope for the future. Seeing these young folks come into our industry.
That's really encouraging to hear from both you and Calvin about the future of mentees and where they are and our place in supporting them. I know that there are positives for a mentor. Can you share a little bit of what the negatives are for a mentor?
Do you want me to go
Go
first,
ahead,
Calvin?
Ray. Yeah.
Okay, so uh, investment in time and planning, right? And I don't say that as a negative, as I don't like doing it. It is another thing that you have to voluntarily add to your plate, and it's just another thing you have to balance, right? Between being, a spouse or a parent or a friend or whatever your career is, or your outside life from work, and then you're adding on top of it mentoring, which means maybe I need to come up with a plan for this individual. I have to make sure I stay in contact with these individuals. um, it might not be my best day when they reach out for advice, but they don't need to know that, right? And if sometimes it might be okay to say it's a challenging point for me, but here's how I overcome it. Other times it's I want to be holistically supportive of them in that moment. So at negative, as far as it's just another additional factor that you have to account for and balance in your life, but so rewarding at the same
Yeah.
time.
I think I echo all of what Ray does because I think said there because I think some people have the idea that mentoring is just, well, you just kind of hang out and talk. I mean, there is a good amount of planning. There's also a good amount of sort of emotional investment because, at least for me, I don't just decide to just kind of walk alongside everybody. If I have a functional group of like 30 people, I don't walk alongside every single one of them in the same way. And the ones where I'm like, there's a special kind of relationship. It takes investment. And I think one of the negatives, which can be seen as a positive too. I want to see that there's always the bright side of things is that when we hear stories about all the mentoring type of things that happen where people have been mentored and they become successes, they become pro basketball players, they become, and you hear all the success stories, and then we don't always hear about the stories where it didn't work out that well, even though that person invested in that other person in a really positive way and spend all that time. They sacrificed the time with their family and all sorts of things in order to be able to invest in someone's life. And I think some of the challenge there is for the mentor is to sometimes take it personal and allow that to sort of like kind of seep into their hearts and say, is there something wrong with me? Did I do something wrong? Versus really, and it becomes a positive because now we, you know, as mentors, we have to have that sort of mental and emotional fortitude to say, you know what, I'm not perfect. I'm going to walk alongside people. I'm going to do the best I can, but I can't, you know, take all that on as my own. And that's okay. And that's something that, you know, I would tell people too, is that when I'm walking into a mentoring relationship, I'm not going to tell them, hey, it's going to be awesome. You're just going to become the next CEO. What I'm going to tell them is, you know, I don't have all the answers, but, and it may be challenging, but I will be here for you. I will be here for you.
That's really poignant, Calvin. I think it is a risk. It is a risk to be a mentor to someone, and then scaling to have how many mentees can you mentor at a given time? How do you stretch that out? How do you make the most of it? How do you be intentional and not have mentor-mentee relationships just stretch on and not have a path? Because very much so, it's all about a purpose, right? And really instilling and regarding that purpose and holding it to be what it is, a precious thing that that is for a period of time. And once that time is over, there's not a lot of interaction afterward. I think one of the negatives that I've seen is that introspection of yourself. And I think it's actually really summed up. I've been thinking about this last week in the movie Good Will Hunting. So if you remember Will Hunting, right? Matt Damon is this prodigy, but he's extremely unshaped, right? He's a diamond in the rough. And this professor finds him and says, I need, you know, he sees that potential, but he realizes he can't work with him. And so he brings his college roommate, a psychiatrist, to work with him. And I think it's a tale of two mentors, because both of them are mentoring each of them, the Matt Damon character, at the same time. And one goes south. One realizes that they can't get past their own limitations. And it's, you know, in that part of where Will burns that solution, and he just grabs it and puts it out and looks at it and realizes he's looking into his own misery at that point. And on the other side, right, you had the other mentor. He's dealing with the death of his wife and working through that. And as they understand each other, he is then lifted out of that as well. I think that's the risk we take as mentors, is that we see somebody with huge potential. We try to encourage them, but we're also like that parent who wanted to get that basketball scholarship, is now pushing their child to do that, right? They're trying to relive their hopes and expectations onto that next generation, the things that they weren't able to do. I think that's the risk we take, is that we need to separate ourselves from that and let them grow. But it's like putting a seed in the ground. You don't know whether it's going to flourish or whether it's going to bear fruit, whether it's going to wither. Right. But your act is helping that seed and nurturing it. But whatever else happens is out of your control, out of your hands. And that's very tough sometimes.
Yeah, no, I think that's been a huge challenge. You know, you love the success stories that come out. You know, you plant the seed, you water it, you see a flower come up, you see a tree come up. Other times you plant it, you see like some thorns come out. You're like, whoa, what's going on here? And you know, not taking it personal, not allowing your sort of past to come into it, to tell you, to redefine who you are is really key there. Because in that way, we don't give up on mentoring other people. Because that's the last thing we want to happen, right? Is to give up investing in other people.
Exactly. Yeah, and I would say, and the story's not over.
Right.
Go ahead, Ray.
Oh, and I'm sorry, I was just going to add, and being a part of a mentorship network, right, helps with that. So understanding that we take the risk, but we're not completely encapsulating the mentee. We are one aspect of a mentor to them, and they can have many mentors. Right, that helps surround them. So understanding that, but still, every one of those mentors is taking the risk, right? Because you don't want to have self-projection onto that individual. You want them to find their own path.
Absolutely. And Ray, you really segued perfectly into our second topic, which is building a culture of mentorship. But we're above the halfway mark now, so we wanted to make sure that there was opportunities for questions and answers from the viewing audience. Corey, are there any questions that we can put up for this panel to discuss?
Yeah, thanks, Terrence. And as Terrence mentioned there, if there are further questions as we go along, please put them in the comments section, and our panelists will get to them as soon as we can. But we'll start off here with one from Gary. He asks, your reflections express a great representation of authenticity. Can you share how you've expressed your own uncertainties while mentoring others?
Sure.
Mm.
You know, my first actual internship that I was a lead mentor for a project. I came in with a plan and talked to the relatively small team. It was 2 interns that I started with. Here's our plan, and I think it's going to take us 6 weeks to accomplish these goals. And I broke them down into bite-sized pieces. Those young, smart professionals knocked that out in a week and a half. And at that point, my entire plan for the summer was thrown just into chaos,
Wow.
right? And I did not know, I was not prepared for them to achieve those milestones so quickly. And that was a learning curve for me. And I entered a space of uncertainty on where the next several weeks are going to go. So just open it up front with the interns. Here's what happened. I thought it was going to take X amount of time. It took, you guys knocked it out a lot faster. Here's the plan that we're going to go with, and it turned into a really great experience of working together to determine, where are the bricks going to be in this path that we're taking over the next several weeks. And it wasn't laid out by me solely, right? I put way markers right along the path, but they helped connect those right frankly, in very efficient and creative ways. And they felt a little bit of that ownership too of their own destiny for the summer. And that was very rewarding. And that was an oh my gosh moment when they knocked that work out so quick. Uncertainty flooded in, but it worked out.
Great.
Yeah, that was a great testimony by the way there. That's awesome. I had one experience where we had an employee at work that just for the longest time he was kind of, there's like the employee that a lot of managers don't like to work with, and they keep like sort of punting them into a new organization, and so each new manager has to inherit somebody and figure out how to, they call it fix it, but then it's really like really to figure out where the pain points are for this person, how to help them rise up. And so I remember my boss saying, okay, well, you have this person now. And I was like, whoa. And I talked to all the managers to figure out what was going on. And my boss basically said to me, like, I want to challenge you to take this person onto your own project. I'm like, there's no way I could do this. And so walking into it, I felt extremely uncertain because I didn't really have a real plan other than give him some work. And I actually expressed to him, was like, I don't know where this is going to go. And I don't know if it was like a formal mentoring relationship as much. It was like I'm his functional and his program boss. But in some sense, it was a call upon me to, with very little information other than a lot of negative ones, to see where the diamond in the rough was and to help this person. And so that was challenging for me, and it ended up being where it wasn't really my plan for him that actually worked out. It turned out that a lot of other people, because I spoke to other people stepped in and helped, and so they eventually took away the uncertainty and found the spot for him to fit in. But for me, I had no idea what I was doing there other than to just try this and try this, check in with him, him pushing back a lot because his personality was like, hey, don't tell me what to do. He was like I think he was like in his 60s, and I'm like, this guy in his like early 40s trying to do this, right? And but I would say that those type of relationships are really, really valuable too, because again, you learn a lot from that.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point, is that mentoring relationships don't have to be chronologically set. That you are mentoring both someone who may be younger than you. They may actually turn around and become your mentor in about 5 years' time.
Yep.
And those are all valid possibilities. And I think that's one of those uncertainties we have as we go into a situation. I think mentors have the added responsibility to step forward and to acknowledge that, to say, yes, I don't know what's going to happen in the future. Here's my perspective. And ultimately to take those arrows if things go south, regardless whether it's the mentor's or mentee's fault or whoever.
Yeah.
Because you're the mentor and you're in that structural relationship, it's your fault. And I think ultimately in the long term, that works out very well, because the mentee typically has much more opportunity in the future than you do. And when you realize that as an exponential with time, in terms of just a binomial distribution, binomial choices in the future, that means for the aggregate, the mentor taking the hits in the group velocity that allows the mentee to then strive and come out unscathed and really have a second chance to really go much farther than the mentor.
Yep.
And I describe that in my book as really grabbing that person and slinging them forward at your own cost of your momentum. And I think that's one of the marks of a mentor in times of uncertainty, is to really sling those mentees forward at your own momentum cost. Corey, any more questions that we have from the audience?
Yeah, no other questions at the moment from the audience, but I have one that's kind of come up as I've been listening and just taking all this in. It's been really great and inspirational so far. So logically, I guess we all start in the mentee role, but at what point do you realize that you can also be a mentor? Is there a a light bulb that goes off? Is it a milestone in your career? At what point do you start to take that on as well?
Wow.
That's a great question. And we all know that each individual is going to have a different time, where they feel like they've hit that maturity level or that contribution level in the subject matter to help mentor people. One of the things now that we've done at FTS 7 years of internship programs, there are some cases where now we have students going into their master's program who've been mentors for 1 or 2 years. And
Nice.
2 years ago, we had an individual say, I really like how the multitasking, right, at being a mentor, is there any chance I could be your sub mentor? And I was like, that's actually a great idea, right? Because you've gone through this internship program for 2 years. I can show you what I've learned to manage small teams, and you can then gain that experience by having the day-to-day interaction. And talk about a benefit, you get to relieve some of the pressure on me from having to do that engaging day-to-day with all the members of the team. So that person found out that their right time was early 20s, going into a specific team where they felt comfortable. And I think that can be for sports, right? We find people can mentor other people at multiple ages. I love seeing an older kid, oh, you know what, here's actually how you hold the baseball to throw it, right? That's the first
Yeah.
steps in starting to do that mentoring. So for me, it's on the more technical side, mid 20s, right, is where you start to get like that small team aspect, learning how to distribute smaller tasks. But I'll tell you, I'm still being mentored right now, and will continue to be. So it's just, when does it really start? Because it never ends.
I wanted to piggyback off what Ray said there, because I think there was something key about the context really does matter, right? Like my 14-year-old could definitely mentor like a 11, 12-year-old kid in certain areas that is fitting because of like her experiences, right? And as you get older, it changes. So I think at any different age, there is a opportunity for people to be able to do it. Now, it requires a certain kind of maturity in that particular area that they would mentor someone in. But I think, for me, it was really when someone, a couple of examples, my boss said, you know what, I think it's time for you to take on this challenge here, because they believed in me. And so if we're lucky enough, we have and blessed enough, we have a mentor that tells us that you can do this. And that's a clear sign, right? That because someone else believes in us. And that's what we want to instill in others when we're mentoring other people, right? Other times it's, I know I'm ready. Sometimes because someone asks me about something, they want to be mentored in something because they see something in me that they want. And so that means it gives me a sign that I have something to offer to somebody. And other times it really is just me. If I'm, in a space where I'm thinking about this, I'm like, I feel full, and I feel like I can pour out into other people's lives. I don't actively look out for people to mentor, to be honest. I'm not, that's not my personality per se, but definitely I can tell when I'm ready for it, because I feel full in particular areas of my life where I feel like, I can pour into a person's life that is wrestling with, these certain things.
And Calvin, I think, like you said, people come to you because they see something in you that they
Yeah.
want to learn from, and really that also comes, that's leading by example,
Yeah.
right? You are setting the example and holding the standard, and people can recognize that because that's not always done,
Hmm.
and then that attracts those that want to learn from it. So yeah, great point.
Great. These are great questions. Thanks so much, Corey. I think a lot of what we've discussed actually rolls into that building a culture of
Yeah.
mentorship that we want to talk to and spend the rest of the time in our presentation talking
Great.
about. So as we go into this roundtable back again, this culture of mentorship, right? You were talking about having other people around you, having a circle of other mentors. There are support structures that are in place or need to be in place for an effective mentor to be mentoring. So what kind of local culture do you look to create? And I know, Ray, you mentioned that a little bit in your discussions. So how about you start off? What local culture do you look to create with your mentees?
Sure. So, we are fortunate enough that our company sets a great culture and standard for us to thrive with, mentors. So, we have a great support structure. What I look to do is, use that as a foundation, right? We have people who are, interacting with the interns on, social events. How do we get the interns not to be pigeonholed in a cubicle for, 8 hours a day for their entire summer, but how do we get them to interact? Because when you're interacting with your coworkers, you're more productive, right? Um, the culture of being able to enjoy what you're doing and feel comfortable to ask your coworkers a question, right? There's nothing worse than somebody um, working on a problem and just spending hour after hour after hour trying to brute force through that problem when they can reach out to a peer, right, or a mentor, or just an individual in the company, and ask for support. And helping teach them that is valuable because for whatever reason there are individuals who think it's going to look bad if I ask a question, and that is not the culture that we want to have, right? We want to have a culture of, I'm a resource for you just as much as you're a resource for me, and let's use each other to propel ourselves forward. And then also a culture of quality, right? We always want to put our best work forward. So in doing that, I need to be open with my peers to say, here's something that I've done. I would like you to help me provide quality control in whatever manner that might be. Something as small as QCing an email before I send it out could be very beneficial, or to reviewing code that I just wrote, or you know checking a solution for an algorithm that was developed. Uh, all all of those things become propelled when there's a culture that supports it. When you don't have a culture supporting that type of engagement, you could see bad traits or unproductive traits start to seep in, and that's not good for the individual, and it's not good for the group or company as a whole.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I wanted to piggyback off a little bit of what you guys talked about there before, which is um, kind of at the microcosm level, um, creating a culture really is we got to model it and live it out, right? People have to see that what we say, what we're telling people to do, that we're exactly doing that, even in the hardest of times when it doesn't always benefit us to follow a particular way of doing things, makes things hard and whatnot. So I think starting with ourselves is definitely important. But me working at a company like Northrop Refor and Raytheon, at these large companies, you can't just it's hard to have a whole bunch of just one-on-one relationships and you tell people to do that, and now there's like this big culture of membership, of mentorship. They have to create very large sort of programs and infrastructure to facilitate mentoring. And I feel like that's what these bigger companies, would do. Something like, right now I'm in a emerging program management development program. And so the program is used to facilitate mentoring. They don't, and in fact, what they've done is they've actually, every single person in that program is assigned a mentor to an executive at the company that you meet with once a month or once every other month. Now, is that awesome? Well, not every mentoring relationship is going to be awesome, as we talked about in the last segment, right? There's going to be mentoring relationships with the guys just kind of or the female's like, or whoever it is, they're not really great at it. But the idea is that they've created an ecosystem for that to happen, where they want to grow people to become better program managers. Or at Northrop, they had a program called Pathways, where they created a space for people to young engineers coming in to rotate to different programs every single 6 months to a year, and every one of those programs, the project manager or the program manager, depending on how big the program was, would be kind of like a mentor to them to help them, learn the tools of the trade of mechanical or electrical or software engineering. And so I really like that because it inspired the younger people to take ownership because they wanted to step into a place where they wanted to learn something new. And the people there, the managers were called upon to say, help this person because we want to retain these people. We don't want to scare them away. Right. And so I think that kind of in a large system like that, that's what we have to do is create things that facilitate that. And then it really is back down to the individual to choose whether they're going to walk into that or not. We can't force people to do that. Right. So.
Yeah. And, depending, and again, I deal with a lot younger, right, mentees, but, they can come in sometimes and look at you and look at the folks in the company. At FTS, we have a lot of senior people, right, both in stature and age, but they can look at it and be intimidated, right?
Yep.
And having a culture of, having a social lunch, on a semi-frequent basis, we try to do game nights, and we let one of the lead interns set up the night, and we'll take over the conference room and we'll just, order pizza and play games. They get to see the human side of you. They get to see the side of you that isn't the professional that's intimidating. And it's a side that hopefully that helps, ensure the mentee mentor bond is a little bit more solid than if that human side of you wasn't shown.
Exactly.
And these are actually really great points. I was kind of smiling and thinking through for both Ray as well as Calvin, because I have the distinct privilege of being in both of your organizations in the last couple of years. And I think one unique thing that I see that's very, very cool about both organizations is that they, at the local level and also at the global level, have a culture of listening. That they listen and hear. It's not just all about bottom line, let's focus on getting the job done and everything else just ignore. It's really, no, I'm listening. I want to hear what's going on. And I saw that in spades during the coronavirus time, in which management and leadership was at all levels. It wasn't just at your functional title or anything like that. Everyone was listening to one another and really having those conversations. And I think having those conversations, creating that space, is the culture. It is something that, as long as everyone is trying to create a program and saying, well, does that scale for my large organization, or does that meet the individual need of my smaller organization or local level? Having those questions, trying something, even if it fails, at least in that period of time, there was some movement forward and some growth towards thing. I have one of my, it just came back to me, one of my former mentors, and the one that ran the program for these at-risk youth way back when. Eventually, they had to close down that organization. And everything has a beginning and an end. And they were asked by their board, did you help one life? And her answer was, yes, I did help one life. And is that worth it, to just help one life? Assuming all of this, fell apart and didn't matter, was it worth it to do that one? And the answer is, of course, yes.
Yeah.
Right. So it's not about the success of the program. It's not about the success of the mentor-mentee relationship. Did you help one individual life?
Wow.
And push them forward, right? And that's the impact that we have as mentors, and that's the role we have as we step forward. So I just want to share with you those thoughts and leave with that. I think we're starting to run out of time. I want to make sure there's a little bit of time for questions. Final thoughts for Calvin and Ray before we close.
First, I want to say that last statement that you made there, I think it's even impacting my heart right now. I'm like feeling like the chills in my back right now, because did I help one life? It wasn't the bottom line. It's not about, hey, did I get this program? Of course, we want the programs to be successful, but did I help a life? Did I help a life? Did I help someone grow? Did I help someone step up and realize who they are and be inspired? I'm like, that is huge. And I want to encourage everybody out there who, whether they've been in a mentoring relationship or not, that if we can focus on that goal, that if we've helped that person and just really focus on that and not think about are they gonna like change the world? But just in that moment that you've helped that person take steps forward, I think no matter what you feel at the end of it, that you should feel awesome as one of those things because you've helped that person step forward, even if it's one step. That's such an amazing statement. Thank you, Terrence, for sharing that.
Yeah, no, that's great. And closing thoughts. I do see that there was a question, and if you don't mind me trying to address the question in this final thought. And the question that I see here is, what about shy individuals, right? How do you reach out to them? And part of the opening and engagement when you meet somebody for the first time, you want to understand that person. I like to try to talk to people, even shy or extrovert, introvert, about what are their hobbies, what are the things that they like to do, and then we try to build that over time. I know nothing about knitting, or I knew nothing about knitting, but one of the mentees, right, thoroughly enjoyed it. So we even asked if you're okay with it, could you show us how to do it? And that created, another bond to sort of help somebody who's shy build a common bridge to allow us to better communicate with each other on a topic where they have confidence. And then you can just build from that bridge, right? And then you're just stacking on other bridges. And, and then for us, it goes into the technical realm as well, right? And that's where we find the social, right, personal side, and then we go through their degree program or their area of or the area that they want to grow into and start building those. So yeah, that there is another example of how impactful it can be to a mentor to be able to help individuals, and seeing somebody who might otherwise be a little bit more reclusive or not engage as much, and see them by the end of the mentorship comfortable and interacting with the team. And teams are made up of multiple contributors. We all know that. Everybody can contribute to a team. So finding where these individuals can contribute that matches with their skill set and their interests is another way to pull people who might be shy or reclusive out of their shell and have them engage more.
It's so good. It's so good.
Awesome. Those are really awesome points. Thanks so much, Ray and Calvin. If we have any last questions, Corey, please send it up. Otherwise, I'm just really excited. I think we've really been able to share the culture of mentorship, how that impacts individuals, and how that impacts society in general. I think it's something that we can do at all ages and all times in our careers and life. So thanks so much for the time, guys, Calvin and Ray and Corey. This has been really special.
Thank you for inviting me. This was awesome. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, gentlemen. And as mentioned earlier, this is part of a series. If you are just catching this one, if you want to see the earlier episodes, there's the Ultimate Upgrade Essentials Startup, Self-Assessment, and Finding Your Path webinars are available on our YouTube channel. You can also find those and other IEEE USA webinars. If you go to our website, under Calendar, click on Career Webinars, they're all right there. And we also have the 5th episode, which will be coming up November 18th on Leadership at the Edge of Performance. So be sure to check that one out as well. I'd like to thank our panelists, Calvin and Ray, and Terrence, Dr. Yo. As always, a pleasure, and look forward to checking out that next one, November 18th. I think we are out of time, but thank you everyone for tuning in. Don't forget, you'll be getting a survey afterwards for everyone who registered. If you could fill that out, that really does help us to inform future programming. And be sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel to make sure that you don't miss future content like this. So again, thank you, and look forward to next time.
Take care, everybody. Blessings to you.
Take care.
My superpower is engineering. I've been a roboticist almost all my life now. I think engineering is just as creative as the arts. Engineers, we solve problems. It impacts the world. It makes a difference. Without IEEE, I don't think I would have the network that I have. Anyone can get involved with IEEE USA at any time. There's an immense amount of value for anyone at any career stage.